Today, I'm in the music room of Domrick Elementary School in Winter Park, Florida. And the music teacher in that school is Miss Doris Hotaling. She's going to give us a tour of this music room and talk about the various games, various charts, bulletin boards, textbooks, all equipment and the resource material that she's assembled to teach music at this elementary school. So Doris, let's start with the bulletin boards. We seem to have a lot of them around here. Would you describe their purpose and what you mean for them?
The first bulletin board here is Peter and the Wolf, and the children have studied Peter and the Wolf earlier this year, so this is one that we made as we were studying that piece of music, and it, of course, has all the characters in Peter and the Wolf, and they can relate to it if they see it on a bulletin board. The one that's over here is one that tells the four basic families of instruments in the orchestra: the strings, brass, woodwind, and percussion. And that, too, is something that we've studied. So this, we feel, relates to the music program. The bulletin board in the back of the room is one that my intern has just made. And she's elaborated those same families of instruments, string, and has illustrated each of the instruments, the woodwind, brass, percussion, and shows where the conductor stands. This was made recently because we just went to visit the orchestra, and so the students studied that more in detail. Now, the bulletin board that you see over to the side is one that I call my news bulletin board. It has photographs of the children and performances. It's divided up into the band. We have a 6th grade band, a 5th and 6th grade chorus. We have a large Suzuki program here, Suzuki violin, and then we have a section for classroom pictures. I put notices there if we have any violins for sale. Parents can go there and find out where they might get a violin. Programs of events, our ribbons are displayed there for things that we've won. Mainly the pictures are there, and pictures of the children as they've been involved in the activities, and they enjoy watching that one, and it changes throughout the year.
I noticed you also have a hallway full of pictures, and we'll show a picture of that, but tell us about the pictures in the hallway.
The pictures in the hallway have accumulated over the past 9 years, and we take pictures of all the programs. And I have students who are now even in junior and senior high school, and they come back and look at themselves when they were little elementary people. Mm-hmm. So those accumulate over a period of long time. The pictures of the children, I feel, are really important because they like to see themselves involved in their activities, and it brings them back. It's something that they can remember. So we take lots of pictures.
Do you also have bulletin boards throughout the school in terms of music, or are there occasions when you use them?
Sometimes there's a bulletin board out in the foyer, and during Music in Our Schools Week, or if we are having a special program in December or later in June, sometimes we use that bulletin board, but generally not. It's mainly the things that are in this room.
Now, I notice that as we walk around the room, you have many games. And you have certain systems of charts that you keep on every child. And it might be interesting for us to know more about the chart. In other words, how do you keep the, why do you keep the charts? I mean, I'm sure there's a reason.
Let's talk about my favorite chart and the children's favorite chart. And it's this one right here. It's called the Music Star Chart. If you notice down the left-hand side, every teacher's name is listed here. When the children come to music class, if their classes behave well, they receive this star, which they take back with them, and they can hang it on their door. And as people pass through the building, this says they have behaved well in music that week. And they can earn a star every single week. And the way we do that is if the whole class behaves and behaves well, then the children get this star, and then I enter it on the chart, one for each week. At the end of the year, after 34, 35, 36 weeks of school, the class that has the most stars earns a party. And they know that, and so they work hard to have good behavior in the classroom. I think that good behavior in the classroom is essential when we're talking about teaching anything. So I'm pretty strict with behavior, and One other way, I'll tell you just this one other thing, if we can look here. If the child misbehaves in music and does anything out of that they shouldn't do, thank you, that's just what I needed. And I write Bill's name on the board for talking. I usually don't make a big deal out of it, but if Bill is talking out of turn, I just put his name on the board. He sees it, everybody sees it. If I get 3 names on the board, they lose this star, and the class knows that. So as soon as 3 names are there, they don't even ask me if they're getting the star. They know they've lost it. If Bill talks the second time or misbehaves the second time and gets a check by his name, then he has a second thing that he has to do. The first one is just a warning. That's really no penalty for your name on the board except 3 say no star. Once he gets a check beside his name, then he has to write a report for me. And then he sort of begins to pay for his misbehaving. If Bill hasn't really caught on yet and gets a line under his name, then he has to stay in after school for a half an hour. So far, I haven't had to keep anybody after school. So the system works, but it's a fair amount of bookkeeping. You have to keep up with that sort of thing, and you have to, if he has the check beside his name and he has to write a 2-page report, I have to make sure it's turned in, otherwise the system fails. So, but I really believe that discipline's important, and I don't think you can teach without good classroom management. And so this is the system I use. So this chart is very important. Children like to keep up with who's ahead on the stars, and they like to know who's. We have a tie right now. There are 2 classes that have never lost a star this year. So if they both end up with getting stars all year, then they both get parties.
Good.
I'll be Brooke.
Okay, let's move over to the flannel board. Can you tell us how you might use this in your classroom?
Well, the flannel board particularly is helpful by teaching meter, teaching rhythm patterns, just teaching basic theory terms. It's being used the treble clef here. Say it's in 2/4 time. I can ask a student to come up and say, could you please fill in a measure of 2/4 time? And they might try 2/4 notes, or sometimes that happens. And then the class, everybody raises their hand. That's wrong. They realize that has too many beats in the measure. So the flannel board we use a lot for just showing how many beats actually go in the measure and different ways of doing that. So it's really a game if you think about it that way.
One of the things that I feel is important about this is the advantage of the flannel board is that a child does not have to know how to draw the note.
That's right.
Sometimes if you ask them to draw a quarter note, it takes you 20 minutes for them to draw 1/4 note because they want to make sure it's perfect.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, of course, we have lots of things here. And I can put out, let's say if we're with a grade 2nd or 3rd grade, and maybe all they've studied so far might be quarter notes or half notes, then I only make those notes available to them. If you're with a 6th grade and you're into 8th notes and 16th notes, then you can make all of those things available to them. So you'd really only put out a selection of things that they're familiar with to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, they don't have to be able to draw anything to be able to do that, and that is helpful.
I see these cardboard slots down here. They look as though they were useful in some way.
Okay, now these are, we do a lot of rhythms, of course, here at school, and these are patterns that we use to study, and I use them as flashcards. This cost nothing. These would have been thrown away. This came out of boxes of paper, and in the school office I asked the janitor to save these for me, and so I just use them, and it costs nothing, and on each one we have rhythm patterns. These are turned in different ways here, but these are patterns, and we can flash them to the class, and they clap those patterns. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we do a lot of rhythm study.
Normally, a flashcard, the individualized flashcard, would have something here and then some information explaining on the back so that the person could study it and then check their answer. But these are just really just quick
this
visuals.
This is just for my use to show to the class, to go through them. It's not used for individual work at all. It would be used for sometimes I might line 4 children up, and each, if for instance, we had, let's see, if you were holding this pattern and then I was holding this pattern, or maybe we should do it this way since the time signature is there. But we could have 4 of these lined up, and they would go from one measure right into the next measure, into the next measure, while maybe a 2nd grade would be able to clap this pattern. Maybe a 4th or 5th grade might be able to have 2 measures, or a 6th grade might be able to have 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 measures in a row. You can apply this to music. You can be playing a march on the record player, and the children could clap this pattern along with the music. But that's basically what these are for. And they're nice and big so everybody in the classroom can see them.
Yeah, this is very important to be able to use material that most people throw away, and yet you can make a legitimate use of them.
Well, I like to do that, and this is one thing that I use a lot of. Now, there's another thing here, and this is just another way I've written a song out on this. Let's see if we can figure out what this song is. Now, this is a song, a simple song that we have on the 4 different measures on 4 different cards. And a 3rd grader, for example, who's learning to play this song on the bells, we could learn each measure one at a time. If they really can read music, I could mix these measures all up. Say, okay, now let's play it. That's a good test of can they read the music.
Yeah, that way their ear isn't doing it for them.
Right. Another thing that we might do on a song that's even longer than this is, I'll say, and this would be a way of studying music theory. We put these 4 cards mixed up on the floor. Who can come up and find the first card, the first measure? Well, in order to do that, a child needs to know a lot of music. First of all, they need to know that all this information comes at the beginning of the music. Okay? Now, if they figured out that this is the first card, the next thing they need to know, they will have learned rhythm through here. They've learned melody, and if they can see that this goes down, now they've already learned that the tune they know. So they've got to find the next card, and that incorporates rhythm. It incorporates direction of melody, incorporates intervals, that sort of thing. And of course, most of them can figure out that this is the last measure because of the double bar line. For a 3rd grader to be able to do this, or 2nd grader, they need to have a lot of musical knowledge. So we do a lot of mixing up measures. I do that with lots and lots of things. In fact, I can show you one more, since we're on that topic right now. I can show you one more thing that I've made that the children love this game. Everybody has their own packet. It's just a plastic packet. And inside, I have 2 charts. This one is Kookaburra, and this one is a Frere Jacques. And in here are measures. Now, they have the one with K on it are all the ones for Kookaburra. And as you can see, there are 8 measures on here. There are 8 of these cards, so they have to put the whole song together. I generally do this in 3rd grade or in 4th grade. That's after they've studied the song. It's after we've studied direction of melody, rhythm patterns, and so on. And they have a game to see who can do that the quickest, who can get that song put together the quickest. To put 8 measures of a song together is, of course, even harder. So that's just another means of another fun way to get the kids to apply the concepts that we've tried to teach.
How many of these packets do you make up? 30 or 25?
There's enough for every person to have one in the classroom.
So in other words, you could do this on a number of songs, but the format's basically the same.
Exactly. You could do it on any piece. I have, as I said, I have about 30 here, and these 2 songs, Kookaburra and Frere Jacques, I have here. It would be best not to have more songs in the same packet. It really would be ideal to have a packet with every song on it, with just those pieces inside.
Well, you have to sort out of all of your slips then.
Yeah, you have to put all the K's for Kookaburra in one stack and put the rest back. So that's the only complication. But these plastic things, now I got them from our curriculum resource teacher, and they came to me free, but they could be costly if you had to have, say if you had 12 songs, multiply that by 30, that could be kind of expensive. But this is a game that the children really like, and everybody has a chance. If they finish first, and there's a child next door who's having trouble, then that child can go and work with another one. But it's an individualized game. And so you can really see quickly whether they understand those concepts or not.
Here's some cards here that you have. Bingo game.
Okay, now this is, again, it's an individual game, but we play it as a class. And on this side of the game, I try to say, we have a laminating machine here in our media center, but laminating things are kind of expensive, so I tried to make two games out of one. On this side it says Bingo 2 and 3 for grades 2 and 3. These rhythm patterns are rather simple. On the other side of the card it has Bingo grades 4 through 6. And there the rhythm patterns are more complicated. And I have a master, just like any bingo game, I have a master chart. I have the measures there. If we were playing, say for instance, Bingo 4 through 6, I would pull out this rhythm pattern, ti-ta, ti-ta, ta. I would clap that myself for the class, and I would register it on the chart where it belongs, and then of course they look to see if they have that pattern on their card, and then they cover it with this, and it's played just like any other bingo card. This is also a favorite. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves this game.
Now you do this not by having them identify the pattern visually, but by orally identifying.
Right. Well, I clap the pattern or play it on a bell, or I'll tell you, first if you clap it, there's several ways to do it. Let's take this pattern here, for example, ta, ta, ta.
I'll hold it.
Okay, good. I could say, if I were clapping, the simplest way is if I said ta, ta, ta. Almost everybody can get that. The next step that would be harder is if I just clapped it and did not label it. The next step, that's even harder than that, is if I happen to go to the piano, for example, and played that same rhythm pattern, but I mixed it up with a melody. So we have different levels. Mm-hmm. And that would, you know, you can use the same game, but you can, according to how I clap or do perform the pattern, will make it harder for the children. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say that you have only 5 minutes of a music period left, and you think, gosh, let's do something fun. Well, you can pull out these cards, and instead of filling up the whole card, say, okay, let's just say whoever gets the 4 corners first is the winner. And you can do that in 5 minutes. The one thing that the child has to do is if they get bingo, they have to clap that pattern back to me. And so they're not only hearing it, recognizing it, but in the end they're performing it.
They know they may have to perform it.
They know they have to perform it every time. So this game, I think, really helps with rhythm.
How long have you had this? For instance, it looks pretty sturdy, and it looks like it's held up pretty well.
This is a game that I made just this year. Mm-hmm. So these are, but we've used them a lot. But when you laminate it, it really helps. Now, I think there are other ways that you could do this. If you needed to, you could even mark on here. Let's say you could use this game, you could almost play, 2 children, you and I could play tic-tac-toe with this game. Mm-hmm. You'd look at that and you'd say, I'm going to clap this pattern and put my X there. And I'll say, okay, I've got to do this one, I'll put an O there. And the 2 of us could use the same game and
yeah, but what if you didn't clap it right?
And I don't get it.
You don't get your O.
Yeah, I don't get my O, so yeah.
So you have to have a certain amount of respect for each other.
That's right, yeah. But it could be used as, as a game that way. Mm-hmm.
Now, these are just tabs that you use to fill in.
Just construction paper.
Do you use these for other things, too, besides the bingo?
No.
Okay.
I just use them for that. So that's what this bingo game has been really kind of a hit this year with
I noticed also you used a coffee can here to hold these things.
Never throw away anything.
I'd like to stress that nothing should ever be thrown away with at least thinking about how I might use it in my class.
Right. Well, there are a lot of things that are very, very useful around that we often throw out, and so it's nice to save things.
Here are some others that you have here. You want to tell us about these?
Right. Well, now this is just similar. This is another piece of music. These are all things. These are charts that I've made when we're talking about form. If we're studying form in music, there'd be several things that we might want to do. One, we might create A-B form with the children. We would create A-B form. We're dressed differently. You're a man, I'm a lady. we would create A-B form. So the children could see this in a chart. If we were talking about AA-BA form, notice that the colors here are the same, and we made a contrasting color. Very often I start my form lesson generally by saying, let's find things in the room that repeat, repetition. Then let's find things that are contrasting. And the children very often, for repetition, they'll say, look at all the stars on the chart. That's repeating. So then you will find that. So we find things in the room, then we...
Or the bricks in the wall.
The bricks in the wall, the composers
squares.
on the front. But there are a lot of repetitious things. Then we try to find things in our clothing that might be repetitious. You might have 4 boys with red shirts on. Then you can relate that to the music. Let's listen to this music. Let's listen for the first idea. Does that idea repeat, or do we have a contrasting idea? This particular game is one that the children like almost better than any game in the whole room. Right now we have cards in here of different musical instruments. The way the game would be played would be to have a recording of, say, for instance, a violin or a double bass, and then the children hear it, and maybe you'd have 2 children. As soon as they hear the instrument play, the one that, if they think they recognize it, they jump on that particular block. Now, I made this game, and I made it so that this game could be played with lots and lots of different musical concepts. This one we're using with instruments and studying tone color. But another concept, each of these 9 blocks could be changed, instead of putting instruments, now we've got a rhythm pattern. I could clap a rhythm pattern, the children would jump on it, and the first one to get 3 points or whatever would win the game. Another idea that we could use is if we're studying direction of melody. And here we have the melody moving down and then up in a stepwise manner. Another, I won't put all of these in, but another one is just the names of the notes. Here we have the note E, and on every different block you can have the different name of a note. Another example would be studying musical terms, sharp. On this one I have on the back side would be a bass clef sign. This game, I think, is limitless in the kinds of things that you could make. Very often if we have rhythm patterns, and we can start in the top left-hand corner, and I can have the children clap all 3 measures coming this way, going this way. Sometimes we snake it. We'll go this way and back up and down. So it really has a lot of possibilities.
While you're working with this, are the children sitting in a circle around the chart?
Generally, I have them sit in a circle. They can sit all the way around it. Sometimes the only problem with the circle all the way around it is that the ones who are on this side are looking at it upside down. So it's really better if they're in a semicircle to the front of the game. And even though it seems like some people say, well, how can you play that only 2 people can play the game at a time? That's true, but very quickly 2 students could play. If I had all rhythm patterns, for example, here, and we clapped, and I clapped T-T-T-T-Ta-Ta. The first one to recognize it would jump on this pattern. Good, you're right, hop off, do another pattern, and then another pattern, and within a matter of a minute, 1 child has won. Then the winner can pick 2 more people to come up. So you could really go through a whole classroom in a rather short time. Even if they're not playing the game, they could be looking at it. And I always tell them, I'll say, now don't help, but you see if you can find that pattern yourself, even if you're not actually standing up and playing the game. Another way to incorporate more children would be to have a child clap the rhythm pattern. That way the teacher is left out. This is a game that children could play by themselves over in the corner. 1 could clap the rhythm pattern, 2 could play the game. You could even incorporate another child to be the judge and make the final decision. If you wanted another one, he could keep score. So it could incorporate a number of children.
When you're talking about jumping, though, might they not both jump at the same time?
Well, they do. No. Well, first of all, I usually have them take their shoes off. And I tell them that their both feet must be, if, for example, this were a rhythm pattern and they both jumped, and if it were a tie, if they both got on that same square, and it were a tie, then we give a point to each one. That's where your discipline comes in. They have to be able to do this. If they cannot play this game off in a corner in a well self-disciplined manner, then they have to do something differently. But we've not had that problem.
Now, when you made this, did you have to get a special kind of plastic, or did you...
This plastic, it was expensive to make this game because I needed 2 sheets, the back and the front. This came from a boating company. It's the same kind of plastic that's used for windows on boats. And then, because of it being so thick, I couldn't sew it on my regular sewing machine, so I had to have the 2 pieces of plastic put together. I put this tape in there, and then I took it back to the boating company, and they had to sew it. And now this game has been made, I've used for 5 years, and you can see it's just like new.
How do you get the card in this center one, from the back?
From the back side, you have to, the slits are in the back side.
Nice.
So every one has a slit across the back side, and then you have to just turn the game over, and it makes it easier.
Have you ever seen this game anywhere else, or is this your original?
Well, I got the idea, I had seen a game with 9 spaces, and I had seen it with rhythms, and the person had actually drawn the rhythm right on there, and you could not change those rhythm patterns. If children are intelligent, they soon can memorize 9 rhythm patterns, so you haven't challenged them very much, and you've often got a lot of money put into it. I wanted a game that could be changed frequently, and so this was my idea, to come up with a game that could be changed frequently.
Had variations to it.
Right, and that you could play in many different ways. So I did come up with that idea. So,
where did you get your pictures?
I drew them.
Homemade again.
Homemade, but I'll tell you one secret. The instruments, I could not draw those freehand. I'm not that good. So what I did was I found transparencies of instruments. I put this box put this right up on the wall, projected the picture, the transparency on that, and I traced it. That's the same way I did the Peter and the Wolf film strip. That was the first frame.
With an opaque.
Well, that came from the film strip that we had seen. It was the first frame, so I put it on there and traced it. I think that while you may not be an artist, you need to be at least try to find ways to pretend you're an artist. Right. So that's how this one came. But this is really a favorite game, and it's held up very well, and the children thoroughly enjoy this game. Okay, this is another game that we've got that's really a favorite, and I like to use this game with 5th and 6th graders in particular. Actually, 4th graders like this. It's called Musictration. This is an idea that I got from a convention, and but made the game myself. I mean, it's played just like concentration, and the children are divided up into 2 teams. And on one card, for example, if the captain of this team says, and to start off, by the way, to get them in teams, I choose a captain, and I'll ask a musical question. I'll say, what instrument tunes the orchestra to the note A? And if the first one who claps their hand says the oboe, then they get to choose their team first. So they choose their teams, and then they decide whether they want to go first or pass. But anyway, if the first player says number 4, they're singing a whole note, and number 8. Well, this says crescendo to get louder. Now, one has the whole note itself on it, and when we find the pair of that, the other one will say whole note. So they're not just matching 2 whole notes. They need to know the term, and by looking at the term, and then they need to know the meaning of it. In other words, for this one, they'll see the sign for crescendo.
Like the...
Yeah, yeah. And here's other example. Oh, and a wild card. Well, there are 25 on here, so it doesn't come out exactly right. We throw in this wild card. But the kinds of things that we have here is a repeat sign. Here's one treble clef on the other card. It would say treble clef sign. Just to give you an idea, piano, meaning soft, bar line. And, of course, the children, I think this does several things. First of all, they need to know these terms in order to match them. And then they need to cooperate as a team. It's almost a social thing, too. They need to pull for each other on their team, but they need to cooperate. And then they need to concentrate. And so I think it...
How many on a team? Now you've got...
Well, if we have a classroom, say, of 25 children, then you would divide them equally. So...
12 and a half?
12 and a half, right. Oh, you can make it even. But after we get to the end, we always start back at the beginning.
Now, let me make sure I understand this. If there's a crescendo, the definition, and the word crescendo here, but somewhere or another is a...
Is the musical sign.
Is the music
for
sign.
Crescendo.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
exactly right.
And then they remember that number 8 is the...
That's right.
Matches number 12 or something.
That's right.
And
I don't know. Here it is. Hey, we found it. Okay, so if they see somewhere, you have 25 children, and number 1 person's playing. Well, maybe he's turned over number 8, which says crescendo, and then he turned over this one, or let's say this one. Repeat sign. Well, that's not a match, so I have to turn those back over. Okay, say you're way in the back of the room, and you finally say, oh, okay, number 13, and you turn that over, and you say, hey, that's a crescendo. Somewhere I heard somebody say crescendo. They have to remember that was number 8, and that's where it was. It's just like the game.
Well, does it instruct, or does it just check what their previous information, or does it do both?
Well, I think maybe it does both.
Mm-hmm.
I think to concentrate, that helps them with just general kinds of things. They need to know that this sign and this meaning matches. It would be maybe classified as a drill game, I'm not sure.
In other words, the only reason you have a wild card is that one definition and one sign would make an even number.
Right, and that would give us 24, and then we have 25 places.
Could you do this game with 20? In other words, you wouldn't need all 25.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that this seems to be just about right, and within, I'd say, 15 minutes we can complete the game.
Now, that's another question. You said that you had teams.
Mm-hmm.
Does it take long to select the teams, or?
Not if you say, let's do it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, that's
because kids sometimes will stand around and pick him.
That's right.
Yeah.
I usually tell them, I say, first of all, you want your team to win. So in this class, they may pick the strongest, toughest guy out on the football field if they're going to win, but in here they need to pick somebody who knows something about music. So they usually pick the bright kids first. They know who's smart and who's going to pay attention. So they really go after those, and that helps because sometimes it boosts those students who know more about music. So that's a game that, now, on this, just if we can just flip this over quickly.
Whoops.
Lose a few
I
things
think we
here.
lost it.
That's all right. We have another, you've seen the TV game called Family Feud, I believe it is, where you have 2 teams of players. Well, first of all, to start this game, I took a survey in the classroom. I said, name as many stringed instruments as you can think of. As many as you can think of. So they'll start with violin, viola, cello, bass, harp, dulcimer, auto harp. So you might get to the koto, and we get to a few far-out instruments. So I go down, and the ones that are listed the most frequently, the one that's listed the most often probably is the violin, because we studied that in class. That goes in the number 1 spot. The next one is the one that's listed next
most frequently, right?
The last one on this chart would be maybe mentioned only once. Okay, so this is really from a class survey. It's what the children already know. They told me what they knew by naming all those instruments. So I think these are stringed instruments on here. Now you could do the same classification with composers. Name all the composers you know. Name all the keyboard instruments you can think of. You need a classification.
All the woodwind family.
Right. Okay? This classification today happens to be stringed instruments. Okay? So now I have just tucked in here. I know where they are. Okay? So again, we are in teams, and maybe they picked only 3 people to represent them on this side and 3 people to represent them on this side, just as you do on Family Feud on TV. Okay, they'll come up with the first person, name a stringed instrument. Why don't you do that,
All right, I'll say dulcimer.
A dulcimer. Let's see if dulcimer is on here. Okay, a dulcimer is on here. Okay, good. So you don't get a X. Okay? So then the next person, as long as you're right, the next person gets a chance. Okay, let's say the next person names some...
I would say a banjo.
A banjo. Okay, a banjo happens to be on here. All right? So they can... These magnetic things are stuck sometimes. Okay, so banjo. So that team can keep going. And as long as they can continue to name instruments without getting... Let's say if they name one that's not on here, then what they get is an X. Just like the TV show, except it goes bzzz or something. Yeah. Okay, if you get 3 that are wrong, then it passes over to the other team, and all they have to do is get their heads together and come up with one instrument that's on this chart, and they win. They think this is great fun.
Mm-hmm.
The instruments that my students know, as you can see, is this one's violin, and this is the order that they chose these instruments. Cello is next. The harp, I believe, is the 3rd one. Guitar happens to be next.
Well, would this game then only be appropriate with one group of children, or would, you said these children told me that these were the first?
This was a survey that I took among 6th graders. So this would be appropriate for 6th graders. This is telling me what my sixth graders at least would know about. If you wanted to play this game among stringed instruments, say with 1st graders, and you'd have to take the survey first to see what they know, then you might come up with not quite so many instruments. You might come up with, they know the auto harp, they know the harp, they know all the 4 basic instruments in the orchestra, they know the guitar, they know the banjo, but they were not likely to come up with, say, the dulcimer or their koto or another instrument that they hadn't studied yet.
I noticed that you have electrical strips like in refrigerators.
This is called magnetic tape, and you can buy this at a sign company. It's rather expensive, but this is actually a magnet. It sticks to this. This part is on here, and this sticks to it. So when you flip this up, it's a magnet. It's holding it together.
This is also in your refrigerator door.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, this time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can get it from refrigerator repair places. And also use duct tape on the bottom here.
Use duct tape. Now, one other thing, that this one of the violin is also held on with this. So I could take this out, and I can put a whole new series in here. I can put composers, or I can put keyboard instruments.
Or other families of instruments.
Right, or other families of instruments. This just happens today to have the stringed instruments in
You could do this in anything that you would classify as a group, wouldn't you?
Anything that you can classify, then you would be able to do that, yeah.
Now this...
do it with pop singers. That would be fun.
This takes preparation. This takes preparation.
Hours of preparation. But it's things that children enjoy, so. Now, here's...
Would this take a 30-minute session to play this game? I mean, like a whole class?
That game, probably not 30 minutes, more like 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, I don't think to play games I have my 4th, 5th, and 6th graders for 45 minutes. Most likely you wouldn't want to play games for 45 minutes. But if you have studied, let's say that we studied the string family last week, and this week we want to take a review of the string family, this might be a way of just reviewing the string family. So that would be a game that would help us, be a fun way of reviewing.
Right.
This is called a tone color bank, and this particular instrument, and again we've used these magnetic things which are wonderful, and these are pictures of different instruments. This game would be played similar to the game that we saw on the floor with instruments in it, where you'd hear an instrument playing on a recording, and then the child would identify it either by pointing to it or... Now, on the back of this one, and I don't think we can turn it... No, it's not on this one. I do have another one that says solo, and then it has accompaniment. And then what I would do would be play a concerto, for example, that might have a violinist as the soloist, and the accompaniment would be, say, the orchestra. And that way they would be able to identify. But again, it's just ways of identifying the instruments. I'd like to show you another thing that we use in the classroom. This is called a responder. And if you'll just take that and notice it has, as you turn it, it has 4 colors on there. I use this for children to give me individual responses as an evaluation. If, for example, we were studying form, and I said, if you hear a piece of music that has A-B form, for example, then show me the color yellow. And as you can see, we all could turn to yellow. If you hear a music that has A-B-A form, show me the color blue. Rondo could be red, and say theme and variation could be green. And then I play the piece of music. I probably would put this up on the board so the children don't forget if they need to refer to the board saying theme and variation equals a certain thing. And I could play a piece of music, and then they can respond by showing me the color. Now, sometimes they'll look at their neighbor and try to see if they know more than they do, but in general, they give me the answer they think. And this is very simply constructed. It's laminated, again, to try to help protect it, but it's just a circle with 4 colors on it and a frame that it fits in. And these were made here in our school, and it has just a clip that holds it together. And the children, this is another means of evaluation. Sometimes we think the only way we can evaluate is to give a test. And this is an individual response.
Instant test, right?
Instant test.
Mm-hmm.
And this might not be one that you would want to grade the children on, but it's feedback for the teacher. If you're trying to teach meter, and if it's in, meter in 2, meter in 3, for me, I don't know why that's a really hard concept for my children to understand sometime. And if you're saying, okay, show me yellow if the music's in 2, show me blue if it's in 3. And if you look out and you see over half the class is missing it, something's wrong. I either have not taught that concept well, or they need more work on it. So that gives me, it's a response so that I know if they're getting it.
You could possibly vary this by making a number wheel, like 1 through 8 or something like that, and then make this smaller so that it wouldn't need to be so large. And show me how many beats per measure in this piece.
That could be
done.
done.
And they could turn to that.
Anything that you see can be changed. And all of, as I mentioned to you earlier, many ideas that I've used come from math games, from reading games, from workshops that maybe are not music workshops, but you can always adapt things to fit your own use, I think. And this could be adapted to fit any number of uses, I would think. So it's just another idea.
Doris, I see you've made a great deal of use of the space. In fact, you've even used the space behind the cabinets to store things. Can you tell us about that?
Well, this past year we bought 40 ukuleles, and I had no place in this room to put 40 ukuleles. The body of it's sort of broad, so it wouldn't fit into a shelf very well. And I was trying to find a place around the room where that we might could hang them, and I didn't have any wall space. So my husband came up with the idea of drilling on the back of this sturdy, cabinet. He's drilled a hole into the cabinet and actually put this pole inside. It's been glued. It's reinforced, yes, by another piece of wood. And so as this pole comes out here, I can put up to 5 ukuleles. I've just taken a string and tied it right around the top, and then they will fit onto here. And so I have 40 ukuleles here hanging on the back of this cabinet, and then they take up very little space. The only thing that I would like to say in relation to this is that generally I take them off myself and have them ready for the children when they come in. As they bring them back to me, I generally place them back. Sometimes children get a little bit wild in putting them on, and if they're banging next to each other, then they could scratch them up. So I just stand here, they bring them to me, and I place them right on the poles, and it works great. So, You have to make, this is a nice big room, but if you had a small room, you have to make use of every bit of space you have. Now, the shelves where we were working earlier in the front of the room are shelves that my husband has made, and I don't know, I couldn't do it without him coming to make things for me, but those are cabinets that were not in this room, and we just had to make them because I had very little space to put things. I think you have to make use of every corner you have.
And of course, you have ordered some on requisitions from some of your cabinets.
Right. Sometimes you have to order an extra cabinet, but generally classrooms don't have enough storage space, so you have to figure out ways of storing things. And you notice that we even have, for the game cabinet here, I've used these are just boxes that I purchased. They were rather cheap and inexpensive, but they're stackable, and you can fill them full of games. And so when it comes to storing music, games, and music equipment, you need a lot of space to put things.
Why don't we move over to the game corner and discuss this?
Good.
When it comes to individualizing instruction, this game corner is quite a help to you, isn't it?
It really is. And the games that are here are games that the children can come back and play without my assistance. And they know that, again, they have to have the self-discipline to be able to do this. This game is called Nail It, and I took this idea from a math game that I had seen at a workshop. And the idea here is that there's a musical term, and then there are 4 choices, and you see the nail holes. The student has to make a choice of answers. This particular one says fermata, and the choices are a small p, a large F, the
hairpin,
the hairpin, and then of course the hold or fermata sign. If they choose, for instance, the small p as the definition of fermata, the card won't come out. If they choose the right answer and put it in, then the card does come out. So the card is made with a hole puncher, and in the correct answer, just scissors are put there and slip that so that particular one can come out. So they go through the whole stack of cards, and one way you can play this game individually, or if 2 people wanted to sit and play it together, one could time the other one and see how quickly they could go through and see who's the fastest at playing this game. So it could be a partner game just to...
Does it work mostly only on the front card, the first card? Because the holes would be different for each card.
Oh, the holes would be different for each one. This one, for instance, are 2 notes that are tied together. The first one says a tie. This one says a line, a smile, and a mistake. Some of these I put in just to try to see if I can get their attention. And this one, of course, is the right answer, and it's over here. So they are in a different place each time. No, you wouldn't want to put them in the same one.
So when you're making your cards, the main thing you got to do is be sure that you're correct answer.
Have a variety. Now, the box itself, I'll take all of these cards out, and you just hold those for a second. The box itself is a good sturdy wood. It's plywood, and the opening is just big enough for these cards to fit down in. And then, of course, you have the 4 holes that have been drilled in, the string, and then with the nail attached. So it's not a hard game to make, and it's one that is really fun for the children. They enjoy playing this game very much.
And what size cards are these, 3 by 5?
These are bigger than this. This is, I believe, a 5 by 7 card. But you can make your box to fit 3 by 5 or 5 by 7. But this is just a homemade game that is enjoyable for children to play.
Are all of these cards and all of these games the same?
Most of them have the same sets, yes. Now, you could make it different. You could make a nail-it game with only instruments in the orchestra. Classifications. I have not done that. I have about 50 cards in here, so there's a lot of information. It covers everything from instruments to musical terms, theory, that sort of thing. So it doesn't really matter which one the students pick up. They pretty much get the same thing. So I have 7 or 8 games, and these are the first ones to go. They fight over these games. Another game that is a very simple one to make, this is a Pringles can, and I've drawn the picture of a little man here, and this says, identify the music terms. You pull the Pringle card up, and in the first section it has a small P there. If you turn the card around, it gives the definition, which means softly. Then you keep pulling it up. The next one is your favorite hairpin there. And on the back it says to grow softer. And there's fermata, grow louder, loud, treble clef sign, bass clef, and so on. And you can get about 8 terms on this, and a student individually could play this game.
Again, now all of these are laminated just to protect them from wear and tear.
That's the main reason, is to protect them and just to keep them moved. We've had this
Could you
game
do that
for
with a
5
tennis
years.
ball can?
I would think so.
Yeah, Pringles can or tennis ball.
The only thing you need to have to make sure, you need a plastic top so that you can slide this in and out of the top. The top just has a slit in it. And so that is another game. Now, most of the games that I have in here are teacher-made games. This is one that's, I have 3 of these here. These are pizza, kind of round pizza pans. In fact, they came from a pizza parlor.
Supermarket?
No, I went to a pizza restaurant and asked if I could get a few of their cardboard. So this is what I got. And again, they're laminated. And the way this game is played, this one says number 1 instrument. So I have to get the packet that goes with this, number 1 instrument. And inside here, clothespins. This has on it tuba and trombone. So they have to match up. They have to look around here and they find tuba and trombone and they match that. Now up in the corner it says number 3. On the back of the clothespin it says
Number 3.
Number 3. So it's self-checking. When the child plays this game, now they could of course cheat and match up the 3s, but they haven't learned anything that way. And I usually explain that, if you really are testing yourself to see if you know it. So this is a simple game. This would be one that would be easy for the children. One that you have in your hand there, if you look at the one this one that has melodies on it, that one's much harder. And it might be a 5th or 6th grader who would want to play that. And what this actually has on it is a tune. And you da-da-da-da-da-dum. And they have to know that tune by visually looking at it. Then they have to find the title of it. This one says America, so that's
all right, let me see if I can
Let's see if you can find America on there.
Da 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 da.
Okay, good.
Okay, so
now I found America. Up in the top it says number
4. Is that 7? I'm
7.
sorry. I was looking up
on the back of this it says 7. Not only that, but on the back of the pizza pan it says
7. America.
And America. So the answer is on the back. And so all of these would be matched. That's harder because the children have to be able to recognize the melody. And then, of course, here again is one. This one is just with
musical signs.
This would be any kind of matching game you could put on a board such as this. Now, another game that the children enjoy is these are our sun games. And all of these are different. Every single one is different. It's a kind of a happy face. It's made in 2 pieces. This rotates around the sun. This one says notes and rest in 4/4 meter. And down in the little mouth area, you see a whole rest. And if you lift up the eyelid, under there it says whole rest 4 counts. So you see in the mouth the thing you want to identify. Then when you raise the eyelid, the answer is there. And all of these are in classification, so you have each one of those. Now,
well, what are some of the classifications now? You say that, but let's see. You have notes and rests in 4/4 meter.
Right. Okay, this one has tempo. For example, down here we have in the mouth it says vivace. So what would be that meaning? This says very fast. Here's another one, allegro.
Okay,
so those are tempo markings. This one has musical terms on it. Retard. What does it mean? To slow down. This one says
instruments.
Instruments. What family does this instrument belong to? The French horn. It belongs to the brass family. Musical signs. Another one, name the composer. Do you know the composer of the Nutcracker Suite?
Tchaikovsky.
And right you are. Okay, name the notes in the treble clef sign. This note is?
B.
B, and there's the correct answer. And match. What plus what equals? So we have a quarter rest plus a quarter rest equals a?
Half rest.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah, just using your own creativity, and you could any number of things that could be done in that kind of game. Now, I have several games that could be played with groups of children. This is called Treble Clef Speedway, and it was made out of an old Candyland game, I believe, one my children had. I just took it and took the game board. Sometimes you can find boards like this at garage sales. Good place to find it. Covered it with music staff paper, put the treble clef sign on here, and given the instructions for the game. This game primarily would be to reinforce, to drill on musical terms. And up to 4 children can play this game. 2 to 4 children can play this game. The instructions are in the box, and so these are...
Did you make up the instructions yourself?
Yes. Okay, now there are other games here, and many of these, and all of these are laminated, and again, I know they don't appear, they look shiny on the camera, so they're hard to show. But this is an individual game where it's just a manila folder that has the frog on the front. It's called the frog game. The frogs, all the little frogs are here. This frog has an F, forte, on it, and you match that to the lily pad. The lily pad would be, where is it?
Forte.
Forte.
Play loud, sing loud.
Sing loud, okay, there we go. So you match the frog to the lily pad. Again, it's just reinforcing
Now, would you use
concepts.
this for a 3rd grader, 5th grader, what?
Probably a fourth, fifth grade, that area. Some of these games that I have were made not only by my students at school, but also by student teachers, interns, and I have quite a few. This is just a crossword puzzle that's been made. These are on instruments in the orchestra, that kind of thing, and many of these were made by students. These are all games that can be played. They're laminated because they need to write on here. This one, for example, says Scotland's Burning. Write Scotland's Burning on the music staff. Some notes have been written to keep you on the right track. Da-da-da-dum was written in. They have to fill in the second measure, da-da-da-dum, and then they got A, and then they would need to write in B, A, B. They obviously need to know the song, but it's a kind of
challenge.
challenge. And I have students who could do that. And then play what you have written on the melody bells. Does it sound correct? How did you do? Excellent, good, or needs improvement. So this would be a game that for a student who's really, you know, a 6th grader who could do that kind of thing, it would be a challenge. After they're finished, if they've marked on it with a felt tip pen, then they wipe it off, put it back in the game, and it's ready for somebody else to play.
One of the things I noticed in here is that this reflects your philosophy, doesn't it? I mean, this is your creation, isn't it?
Yes.
And what that says is that you might be able to do any one of these. You may be excellent, you may be good, or you may need work, and which goes into the whole concept of self-discipline.
Yes.
Because there's nobody watching over them to see if that's excellent. But
no. And it doesn't have to be excellent. It may be that a student really does need help with this, but it's something that they could work on it until they do become excellent at it. And there are just lots and lots of things like this. Here's one to just draw the symbol in each box. Draw the treble clef sign, the bass clef sign. They range from really very easy to rather difficult ones. So
where are the grease pencils?
The grease pencils, I have a box on top of the piano that says felt tip pens. On the piano, I have pencil box, felt tip pen box, mallet container. I have sterilized fluid for the recorders. We keep things there. The children know where those things are. And I really don't want them asking me for them. They know where everything in this room is, and when they need something, they go and get it. So that way they are free to move about the room and get the things they need without me. They don't really need to bother me for
How much time or how much time do you give them usually for individual projects like this?
Well, this is not something that we do often, but for example, if I need to hear every student play a piece from me, we have a report card this year where I have to give every student in this school has to get a grade on participation, a grade on musical performance, and a grade on music reading. Now,
for every child to get a grade on performance, I need to hear them perform on an instrument individually. So sometimes if I need to hear students perform for me individually, the rest of the students need something to do, and that's when the games fit in. If a student finishes his work early or finishes a test early, if I'm giving a written test, for example, and many students will finish right away. They don't even ask me. They know as soon as their test is turned in, all they have to do is come to the game center, get their game. The only rule is they may not disturb anyone else.
Suppose, would you ever use this as with a teacher wanted to bring their class in here when you were not here for some reason, on a tour or on a trip or absent? Would you?
This room is almost never out of use. I teach between 7 to 9 classes a day in here, so it's always in use. If it were not, it certainly would be available to someone to use it, but it's in use pretty much full time.
One other thing you might be interested in, and these are, again, some things my husband made. I don't consider these exactly games, but these are little wooden pieces that we had. I used the Kadai system of teaching rhythm patterns, and we made hundreds, literally hundreds, of these sticks. These are tas, of course, and you're holding TT in your hand. So if I clap the rhythm pattern, if I give each child, generally what I would do, and these are used particularly in the lower grades, say in grades, well, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. And if you were in my class, you could have 4 TTs and 4 tas, and you would find yourself a spot to sit on the floor. And then when I clap, ta, ta, TT, ta, you would line your patterns up. And once again, you don't need to know. Now do it so that it's facing you. Make your patterns so they're facing you. If I clap ta, ta, TT, ta, 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 TT, ta. Now if every child does that, first of all, they're color-coded. So I can see, I can look around in about 2 seconds, I can look around the room of 25 children and tell whether they've gotten that pattern right or not. They don't have to be able to write anything. It's something a kindergartner can do without having to use a pencil, and it's fun.
Now, did you get this idea from a book, or did you?
Well, I had seen people use popsicle sticks. Someone else had told me about using popsicle sticks. But if in a popsicle stick you want to make TT, you've got to do all this manipulating. So we came up with this idea. So I will say this was an original idea. The tricky part about these is these are just nailed and glued together, so I have to instruct the children to be careful that they don't pull them apart. But we've had these for 3 years now, and it's just
another visual and tactile.
That's important, especially with the little children.
I noticed that one of the things that you require of your 4th through 6th grade students is to maintain a music notebook. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, I have one here. I'll show you. The students in 4th grade, when they come here in the 4th grade, I ask them to purchase a 3-ring notebook. And I give them a packet of material as a basic starter in 4th grade. We have 5 chapters in the notebook. The first one is on songs. And we start with a few songs in 4th grade that right off. And then we keep, basically I have several patriotic songs, and we keep adding to that chapter. And by the time they're in 6th grade, they have quite a collection of songs that are in that first chapter. Then the second chapter that we have, and I'll see if I can find it here, is one called Composers. And again, in this chapter, I give them a basic start on a few composers, and then as we go on and study our symphony notes and that kind of thing. This year, for example, we just a few weeks ago went to hear the symphony play. So all the symphony notes that they have, at Halloween we study Dance Macabre and so on. Whoops, I see a funny mustache drawn on Aaron Copeland there. But these are things that would do with composers.
Now, do you make those yourself?
Yes. Most of these are, I make all of them.
And I think one mistake that some teachers make is that they have children copy things from the board. I don't see them very long, and that seems like to me to be a big waste of time to have them sit down and copy things from the board. So I really try to save them time as much as I can. So I just give them the information, and we go over it in class and listen to examples. I have a student teacher who has just completed a unit on jazz, so that one goes into that chapter. And then we have the third chapter, which is instruments. And in this chapter, as we study each family of instruments, for instance, on this page we have the violin and viola, you notice that the children have filled in key words here. This says, for example, instruments that make music with blank strings are known as the string family. And then they list the 4 instruments. So they have some writing, but not just, they're not writing the whole thing, but they do fill in some key words. So we go through and we study the 4 basic instruments in the orchestra, and then finally we come to a chapter on theory, and here I give them things that we have studied, theory terms and that sort of thing. And then the last chapter is one called, and I'm not sure if this student, yes, she does have it, this one is one called creative work. And in the creative work, sometimes we just put in everything that doesn't fit into another chapter, but it can be their own. They could find pictures and magazines and that sort of thing.
Speaking of creative work, I see you have some creations there that some of your students may have done.
Okay, sometimes, and we don't do this every year, but in fact we have not done this year, but about every other year I assign music projects in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And this project, first of all, the front page is a contract. They fulfill a contract. If they want to receive a certain grade, they have to do 1 project and 2 research papers. If they want another grade, say a B, they do 1 project and 1 paper, and a grade of C would just be 1 project. It's signed by the student, it's signed by the parent, and then I sign it. So we're all in agreement that that child is going to do that project by a certain date, which also goes on here. And just some of the ideas that are in the project, and they're just to choose any one, would be, for example, a pop music dance. They could pick a piece of popular music and create a dance. They would need some costumes. Several children could do it together, or one could do it alone. Classical music dance, singing puppets. They could make their own puppets, create a puppet theater, and mouth to music or put on a little production of some sort. Making a music poster, that's generally a popular one because sometimes it's a little easier. They can make a music game. Present a play about a composer's life. They might want to research the life of, say, Beethoven, and then several people get together and act out a little play on that composer's life. Make a music picture book for young children. And I try to tell my older students, pretend you're really trying to teach, say, a 5-year-old about instruments in the orchestra. Make a picture book that a 5-year-old could understand. That's one they enjoy doing. Making a musical instrument. Now, generally, these projects are ones that they take home, and I rarely have them left at school. But here, for example, is a musical instrument that a student might have made. It's just pipes that are on string, and not a great sound, but it is an instrument that has taken a little time to make. So that's the kind of thing that they might do. To make a music dictionary, and they have to use at least 30 musical terms. Make a model of an orchestra, band, or chorus. I've had some students who truly created an entire orchestra, putting out of paper or pipe cleaners and that kind of thing. I had one earlier today of a child who had made pipe cleaners. I don't have it here with me now. Musical mobiles, and all over the room we have mobiles that children have made, and they hang here, and they're very proud to see their mobile hanging in the music room. So these are just some ideas. Here's one of music bookends. Now, obviously, I would say obviously, I'm not sure, but I would think that a child probably had help with this from a parent. That's okay. I think when parents get involved and help their children, there's nothing wrong with that, and I don't object. But you can see these are, and I use these. The student presented them to me, and I use them on my desk. Here's a small little piece of stitchwork that a little girl made, and out of just a small hanging that says music on it. This is a lovely mosaic of a violin, piece of board with beads of some kind, and the outline of the violin. So these are all music projects that children can take part in, and I feel can benefit from. As I said, we don't do this every year, but possibly every other year or so they can do that.
We were talking earlier today about possibly your philosophy of music in the elementary school. Overall, you certainly have a broad philosophy, but what particular philosophy do you use in your class? For instance, do you confine most of your activities towards Suzuki orientation, or do you use Kodai or Orff approach, or do you have an eclectic philosophy? Or
I would classify mine as an eclectic philosophy. First of all, I really believe, I can't tell you how strongly I believe that music must be for every single child. And I really want every child to achieve in the classroom. And I'm generally not happy until I can get every single student in the room to do what we're all trying to do. I, as you know, am very strong on Suzuki philosophy. I think that philosophy can be carried over into the classroom, into chorus. They're wonderful concepts of teaching that can be just carried over into anything. While I have Orff instruments, I do use them, but I would not consider myself an Orff specialist at all. I do use Kodai rhythm patterns particularly. I don't do quite as much with the hand signals, but I would say I try to use as much as I can to finally reach my goal, and that is to make the students independent of me musically.
in fact, we were talking this morning about your 4 top goals, and one of them was to make your students independent.
I think that's my main goal, is if a student leaves here in 6th grade and they can read music or they can be independent of me, if they can create music on their own without me singing to them and them echoing back what I sing, that's not music learning, in my opinion. They really need to be independent of me as a music teacher. Then I feel like I've reached a goal. And very high on that list is so that they can read music. They need to be able to read music. And in 6 years, I think they should have been able to do that.
Now, you're talking about 180 days if they were there every day, because you see them about 36 times a year as a class.
Right.
And so by the end of kindergarten or say 1st grade through 6th, you've got about 180 days of actual or half hours.
The biggest problem comes from, now our community is pretty well established and fairly stable, but we do have a lot of students who move in from other schools. And that, I hear very often when a student comes from various areas of the country, well, in our school we just learn to sing songs. Well, then you're faced, say, if we're really into reading music and you have a new student come in and they have no idea what you're talking about, then you're faced with a problem. And so we have to, very often I use peer teaching or peer tutoring to help in situations like that. But I really feel it's important that students learn to read music and become independent of the teacher.
Your second goal, you told me, was to leave them with some sense of articulation of their preferences and choices.
Well, I'd like for the students to like music. I think that's also important. But they're not going to like all music. They may prefer classical music. They might like jazz. They might like rock. Their preferences, we all have preferences. But I think they need to intellectually decide why they have those preferences. And I'd like for them to leave me, at least, being able to decide what kind of music they like and why they like it. And intellectually to decide that, not just because it makes them feel good or that's boring. I really get tired of hearing, I don't like that because it's boring. Why is it boring?
You also said that you wanted them to leave here remembering something or having memories of, good memories about music.
Well, I've had several occasions recently where students that I taught quite some years ago have come back and said, hey, I remember when we did such and such, and the best thing that ever happened to me was when we put on a certain musical or that kind of thing. And I think those are really the rewards of teaching music, is to know that you've given a student something that they will remember it for the rest of their life. And I think if a music teacher puts a lot of extra work into a program, I take tours with my Suzuki group every spring break. For instance, for 3 years, I've not had a spring break. Someday, some child is going to say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's worth giving up a spring break if you can do that for a child. So I think it's important to give them lasting memories.
Well, your pictures out in the hall indicate that there's a lot to remember when you see all the pictures of the performances.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I want to give them, every child, you know, one likes square dancing, another one likes playing a violin, another one likes listening to jazz, another one likes playing the recorder. So we have to give them, over 6 years, I have to make sure that they're exposed to every single thing that they can be exposed to. And I feel that if I've exposed them to many, many things, perhaps they will on their own go out and learn to play the guitar or the ukulele. I don't feel that I have to teach them to be a wonderful violinist or, you know, the best ukulele player in the country, but I must expose them to it so that at least if they want to go on with that themselves, then they can do that. So that's really what I try to do, that's the joy of teaching elementary music, is there's so many areas to cover.
I'd like to close this with what one or two things might you say to a young teacher who is just doing their training, and what thing would you leave them with that you feel that they should take into starting their career?
I would like to say, number one, if you're going to teach in elementary school, you need to like children. And if you don't like children, don't teach elementary music, because it requires a great deal of patience, it requires a great deal of understanding, and it needs to mean something to you personally. You put a lot of your life into it, and to like the children and have them give back to you is a very important thing. That would be number one. Number two, I think you need to have goals of your own that you want to reach. If you go and you teach haphazardly, and today I'm going to do this, and I think maybe today it would be fun to do this, you have no goals, so you don't know where you're going. So you need to establish right from the start, what do I want these children to know in another 3 years or whatever. I think you have to also decide you're going to stay in a place long enough to build a program. It takes a long time to build a music program. You cannot do it by moving from one school to the next school to the next school. I've been in this school 9 years, and I feel like I'm just starting. It takes a long time to really establish the kinds of things you want to establish. I think for a person who's going into elementary music, it really needs something to be something that you enjoy doing. I've never come to work a day in my life that I didn't look forward to it. And I think if you're going to do this, you need to enjoy doing it. You need to look forward to going and seeing those children every day.
It's almost like a mission. Like going to...
There are days when you come home and you're tired, but it is. It's an important job. I heard someone said that it only takes one bad music teacher to turn a child against music for the rest of their life. You know, they can survive perhaps a second grade teacher that's not the best teacher and maybe have a terrific third grade teacher, but it only takes one bad music teacher sometimes to turn a child against music. And we certainly don't want to be that one bad music teacher.
Well, I want to thank you, Doris, for inviting us into your musical home. And I'm sure that the children at Domrick Elementary are getting a very good musical education, as well as a humane one and an aesthetic one. And I want to thank you for letting us come into your home.
I'm glad you called it my home. I live in this room 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and it is our home. And I thank you for coming. We've enjoyed it.
The principal at Domrick Elementary is Mr. Bob Holbert, and I'd like to ask him a couple questions about his program and his teachers and his school. And let's start off with where does music fit in the overall program of Domrick Elementary?
Well, I think music fits all over in our curriculum. I like to think that our music program complements the other subjects in the curriculum. And I also like to feel, of course, that the curriculum supports the music program too, which of course they do. Music, well, I would hate very much to be without it. It just seems to permeate the whole school atmosphere here. I like music of an instrumental nature. I think that has its place in the school. I like a choral type of music. I think that also is very important to the school. And I do feel also that music has a carryover effect. For instance, in our outstanding Suzuki program that we have here, the drill and the concentration and the discipline that goes into learning the Suzuki carries over into the other subjects. I think that our children perform better if they're schooled and disciplined in these musical areas.
In other words, not just music training itself, but the skill of learning processes.
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we hear a lot is music is being removed from many schools because cutbacks in funding. And do you think that is a true danger, or?
I certainly do, and I've expressed my opinion in various places in regard to that. I feel the arts have a definite place in the schools, and I think that we're going to be sadly lacking in some areas if we don't use them to the fullest extent we can. It seems that in our school system, the classroom takes first priority, and the special education type of activities take second priority, and the supplemental or the support units such as music, art, PE take a third seat, which to me I don't view in that fashion, because I think the whole thing is a team and they have to work together, and each one is as important as the other. I feel that very strongly, and I have stated that both in writing and in person to anybody I thought it would help with.
Well, what do you think music teachers should do to ensure they're a part of this overall program?
Well, I think they could do very much like my own music teacher is doing. She has a good, strong program. I feel that PR-wise, that our music program here at Domrick is as great a force for music in the schools as anything I've seen. And I'm real proud of it, and I think it's helped Domrick to be the school that it is.
In other words, by accentuating the good parts of the program.
Absolutely, and it has done that for us, I think.
Also, I'd like to ask you about, this is going to be viewed by young students who are studying to be teachers and going through their training. What kinds of things do you look for in hiring an elementary music teacher? Of course, you didn't have to hire the present one. I think she was here when you came, but what are the qualities you look for?
I'd like to take credit for hiring her, but I'm afraid that I can't. I think, just as any teacher, I look for a person who is very, very into their program, teachers who believe in their program. I look for, I guess, personality first when I'm looking at new teachers in any area. But I'm also looking for teachers who are very supportive of their program, very, shall we say, enthusiastic about what they want to do. They have ideas about what they want to do. They have ideas about how they can supplement the other parts of the curriculum. I think that after a while, after a series or a number of interviews that you do over the period of years, you can pretty well pick out the characteristics of a good teacher. Only time will tell whether they turn out that way, of course, but I've had some success in the area, and I do pick, I guess, number one on the outgoing personality of the individual, how well they present themselves at the interview. Of course, I expect them to be a bit timid and shy, but as the interview goes on, they loosen up, and I think I can see a true picture of what they are like and probably what they can do. these are just a couple of things I look at, if it's any help.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.